You've probably seen 100 anime lists that promise to blow your mind. Most of them don't. This one might actually mess you up a little, because this is not about hype, and it's definitely not about the obvious picks. This is a curated dive into anime that quietly distort reality, question identity, and leave you sitting there, slightly uncomfortable, wondering what you just watched, in a good way. Mostly. Some of these stories don't explain themselves, they don't wrap things up neatly, and they're not trying to entertain you every second, they're trying to get inside your head. And once they're in there, they don't really leave. So just keep that in mind. This list builds slowly. We're starting with stories that feel grounded and moving into ones that completely blur the line between reality and perception. By the end, you're not just watching anime, you're questioning it. Let's start with Angel Sanctuary. Released in 2000 as a short OVA, this is not your typical angel story. It follows a teenage boy, Setsuna, who starts to realize that he's the reincarnation of a fallen angel. And from there, things escalate quickly into a world where heaven is corrupt, hell is chaotic, and nothing is as pure as it sounds. What makes Angel Sanctuary stand out is how unapologetically intense it is. This is a story filled with religious symbolism, power struggles, and characters that are constantly torn between who they are and what they're meant to be. It feels dramatic, almost theatrical at times, like everything is pushed just a little further than it should be. And then there's the part that made it controversial. At the center of the story is a forbidden relationship between siblings. It's not hinted at, it's very much part of the emotional core. And combined with the heavy use of biblical imagery, it created a lot of backlash when it came out. But that discomfort is exactly the point. Angel Sanctuary doesn't try to make you feel safe. It leans into chaos, into contradiction, into the idea that even something as perfect as heaven can be deeply flawed. It's not always easy to watch, and it's definitely not subtle. But as an introduction to this list, it sets the tone perfectly. Because from here on, things only get more unsettling. Next is Kite. Released in 1998, this is one of those anime that people don't always know how to talk about. On the surface, it's about a teenage girl named Sawa, trained as an assassin and controlled by the very people who are supposed to protect her. She moves through a world of violence, corruption, and manipulation, carrying out hits with a kind of quiet detachment. What makes Kite stand out is how cold it feels. There's no sense of heroism here, no big emotional speeches, just a very stripped back look at trauma, control, and what happens when someone grows up without any real sense of agency. And then there's the part that made it controversial. The original version included explicit scenes that blurred the line between storytelling and exploitation. Many international releases removed them, but even without that, the tone remains deeply uncomfortable. That's really what defines Kite. It's not trying to impress you. It just leaves you with a feeling that something is off, and it never fully resolves. Next is Rin, Daughters of Mnemosyne. Released in 2008, this one follows Rin, an immortal woman working as a private investigator, solving cases that are anything but normal. At first, it feels like a dark detective story, but very quickly, it becomes something else entirely. Because Rin can't die. No matter what happens to her, she comes back. And the series doesn't hold back in showing what that actually means. Over time, you see her live through decades, losing people, rebuilding, and carrying memories that never really fade. What makes this anime stand out is how it treats immortality. Not as a gift, but as something heavy, something painful. And then there's the part that makes it difficult for a lot of people. The show is extremely graphic. Torture, violence, and suffering are shown in a very direct way, sometimes to the point where it feels overwhelming. But underneath all of that, there's a core idea. What happens when you can't escape time and you can't escape yourself? It's intense and it definitely leaves an impression. Next is Wolf's Rain. Released in 2003, this one feels very different from everything we've seen so far. At its core, it's about a group of wolves living in a dying world, hiding among humans while searching for something called paradise, a place that may or may not even exist. And that's really where the story begins, because Wolf's Rain is not about action, it's about the journey. What makes this anime stand out is its tone. It's quiet, reflective, almost melancholic. There's a constant sense that the world is ending and the characters are just trying to find meaning before it does. Each of the wolves carries something different: hope, doubt, anger, loneliness. And as they move forward, you start to realize that paradise is not just a destination. It's something personal, something that changes depending on who you are. The storytelling is slow, sometimes even fragmented. There are moments where not much happens on the surface, but emotionally, everything is shifting underneath. And that can feel unusual if you're expecting a more traditional narrative. The production itself also had issues at the time. There are a few recap episodes in the middle of the series which broke the flow for a lot of viewers, but interestingly, even that adds to the strange rhythm of the show, because nothing here feels completely stable. And then there's the ending. Without giving too much away, it doesn't give you clear answers. It leaves space for interpretation, and depending on how you see it, it can feel either hopeful or deeply tragic. That's what makes Wolf's Rain stay with you. It's not trying to shock you, it just slowly pulls you into a world where everything feels a little heavier, a little more uncertain. And once you're in it, it's hard to shake off. Next is Darker Than Black. Released in 2007, this one takes a more grounded, almost sci-fi approach to psychological storytelling. The world changes after a mysterious event creates what's known as the Hell's Gate. The sky itself becomes artificial, and certain people, called contractors, gain supernatural abilities. But there's a catch. Every power comes with a cost. And not just any cost. Something strangely specific, sometimes physical, sometimes psychological, almost like a ritual that reminds them they're no longer fully human. At the center of it all is Hai, quiet, controlled, and difficult to read. He works as a contractor, carrying out missions in a world where morality feels blurred and unstable. What makes Darker Than Black stand out is its tone. It doesn't feel exaggerated. It feels cold, precise, and very controlled. The action is there, but it's never the main focus. What really drives the story is this idea of losing emotion, losing connection, and still trying to function in a system that doesn't really care. And then there's the structure. The series is told in short arcs, almost like small case studies. Each one explores a different aspect of this world, different characters, different consequences. Over time, you start to see a pattern. Power, isolation, and the quiet cost of both. Now, this is also one of those anime where opinions split. The first season is widely praised for its atmosphere and storytelling, but the second season didn't land the same way for many fans. It changed the tone, shifted the focus, and lost some of what made the original so compelling. Still, that first season stands strong on its own. It's not loud, it's not flashy. It just built a world where something feels slightly off and never quite fixes it. Next is Boogiepop Phantom. Released in 2000, this is where things start to get a bit fragmented. There isn't a single clear storyline you can follow from beginning to end. Instead, the series is made up of different characters, different perspectives, all loosely connected by a series of strange events and an entity known as Boogiepop. And the more you watch, the more you realize you're not supposed to fully understand it right away. What makes Boogiepop Phantom stand out is its structure. It's non-linear, often jumping between timelines, memories, and perspectives without warning. One episode might focus on a single character, and the next completely shifts the context of what you just saw. It's less about plot and more about atmosphere. There's a constant sense of unease. Something is wrong, but it's never clearly explained. Characters deal with fear, isolation, identity, and sometimes their own perception of reality begins to break down. And then there's Boogiepop, not exactly a villain, not exactly a hero, more like a presence, something that appears when things start to fall apart. That ambiguity is what defines the entire series. Now, this is also where a lot of people drop off, because Boogiepop Phantom doesn't guide you. It doesn't hold your hand, and it definitely doesn't simplify itself. If you're not paying attention, it will lose you. But if you lean into it, if you accept that confusion is part of the experience, it becomes something very different. It's not about getting answers, it's about sitting with the discomfort of not having them. And that's where it starts to really get under your skin. Next is Paranoia Agent. Released in 2004 and directed by Satoshi Kon, this is where reality really starts to slip. The story begins with a simple idea. A mysterious boy on rollerblades, known as Lil Slugger, starts attacking people with a baseball bat. At first, it feels like a crime story, something grounded, something you can follow, but very quickly, that idea breaks apart. Because every victim is different lives, different pressures, different fears, and the more you watch, the more it feels like these attacks are not random at all. They're connected to something deeper, something psychological. What makes Paranoia Agent stand out is how it blends reality and delusion. You're never fully sure what's actually happening and what's being imagined. Characters escape into their own versions of reality, and sometimes those realities start to overlap. It's subtle at first, then it becomes impossible to ignore. Each episode shifts perspective, almost like a case study of modern anxiety. Work pressure, social expectations, personal failure. All of it builds into something heavier. And then there's the bigger idea behind it. Paranoia Agent isn't just about a mystery, it's about how people cope when reality becomes too much, how they create stories, excuses, even entire illusions just to avoid facing what's in front of them. That's what makes it unsettling, because it feels close to real. It's not exaggerated, it's not distant. It feels like something that could happen, just slightly pushed beyond the edge. And by the time it all starts to come together, you realize it was never really about the attacker. It was about everything else. And we saved the best for last. Or maybe the worst. Serial Experiments Lain, released in 1998, is one of the most confusing, deep, and strangely transcendent anime you will ever come across. On the surface, it's simple. It follows Lain, a quiet, almost withdrawn girl who starts receiving emails from a classmate who has just died. And not just messages left behind, but messages sent after her death. From there, Lain becomes more and more involved with something called The Wired, a network that feels like the internet, but also something much bigger, something that doesn't just connect information, but connects people, identity, and maybe even consciousness itself. And this is where the story starts to break, because Lain doesn't explain things, it doesn't guide you. It slowly pulls you into a space where reality, memory, and identity begin to blur, and at some point, you're not even sure what version of Lain you're watching anymore. Now, this is where I'll say something personal. I actually watched this when it first came out. As soon as it made its way out of Japan, I found it. That probably gives away my age a little bit. But I remember seeing it everywhere, in magazines, in early anime circles, being talked about as something new, something different. This was around the time when everything was starting to shift. The internet was becoming part of everyday life, digital spaces were growing, and at the same time, you had things like The Matrix coming out, asking similar questions about reality and perception. But Lain approached it in a very different way. It didn't feel cool or futuristic, it felt quiet, eerie, and deeply unsettling. I remember watching it and not understanding anything. And to be honest, I still don't fully understand it now, but maybe that's the point. Because underneath all the confusion, there's something very clear. This constant question of what is real, what is identity, where do you exist? In your body, in your mind, or somewhere else entirely? And it explores all of this through very disturbing imagery. A young girl slowly losing her sense of self. A tragic suicide that sets everything in motion. Moments where the world feels like it's glitching, like it's not stable anymore. It's subtle, but it gets under your skin. And the deeper you go, the more uncomfortable it becomes. There was even a game released alongside it, which dives even further into psychological and mental health themes. It takes everything the series suggests and pushes it into something even darker. So what starts as something that looks almost simple, just a girl on a computer, quickly becomes something else entirely. A rabbit hole. One that questions not just the internet, but your place within it. And even now it feels relevant, maybe more than it should. Because serial experiments Lain doesn't give you answers. It just leaves you with the feeling that something is not quite right, and maybe it never was. And that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've watched any of these, let me know which one stayed with you the most. And if this is your kind of anime, make sure to subscribe, because this is just the beginning. This is the first video on the channel, and there's a lot more coming. New videos every week, going deeper into anime you might not hear about anywhere else. So subscribe and comment down below what's your favorite, and have you seen any of these? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.